Chapter 10. Hope Reawakened. Dave, Jenna, and Anthony stood before the towering demon named Bartemius, wondering how they might fight him when they were carrying no weapons. Then Bartemius raised his right hand, and a sword with an ominous dark purple aura manifested in his hand. After it had fully manifested, the purple aura around the sword expanded to encompass the floor beneath the four of them. Lastly, a green health meter divided into 10 sections appeared above Bartemius. This is my sword of despair. Attack power 3, durability 3. The sword of my soul, which when manifested deals damage to one random person among us automatically every so often for one section of that person's health meter. The time between activations is dependent on a recharge timer, which is a period of 10 minutes. Also, whenever one of my opponents summons an armament with which to battle me, the one who summoned it loses the same number of health sections as the durability level of the armament. Lastly, this is an Agravanian battle, which means that when your health meter reaches 0, you will die. Bartemius told them. I ask again, for certainty's sake, will you challenge me, knowing that this battle may result in tragedy for you? Or will you give up on finding your friends and run away in fear? Anthony turned to the other two and said, We don't even know how to manifest weapons like he did. So what do we do? Well, we need to fight somehow, Dave replied, already beginning to feel despair over the current state of events. Jenna fell to her knees and cried out,
Please! Somebody help us! God, if you are willing, please provide us with aid for this trial before us!
Meanwhile, as Simon and James were still climbing the infinite stairs, he heard Jenna's voice and he gasped in shock. I just heard Jenna's voice crying out in anguish. I think she and the others are in trouble. I just realized they haven't been any battles with us, so they don't know how to manifest armaments, he said to James. I have to reach them somehow. At that moment, Simon stopped, closed his eyes, and began to pray, saying, Holy Father, I thank you, first of all, for allowing us to progress this far in these trials, as well as for the lessons we have learned along the way. I come to you now, Father, asking you to make it known to Dave, Anthony, and Jenna that through you the impossible may be done, and more specifically, that they know how to manifest the aid necessary in their time of need. Be with them and comfort them. Remind them that there is still yet hope to overcome these perilous obstacles. I pray these things in your Son's holy name, Jesus. Amen. When Simon opened his eyes, he saw that James had also bowed his head and closed his eyes, and he could see by the tear streak down James' face that he had been moved by his prayer. I'm sure your prayers reached him, and I am just as sure that he is already working on it, especially with a powerful prayer like that, James assured Simon. The prayer had indeed reached God, for over where Dave, Anthony, and Jenna were, it occurred to Anthony to reflect upon his soul and look deep within. What he eventually found were two armaments, a sword and a shield. Being concerned about Bartemius' field of despair, Anthony directed his focus solely on the sword and began to imagine the sword manifesting in his hand. As the sword began to manifest in Anthony's hand, Dave and Jenna marveled at what had transpired. Finally, Dave awoke from his stupor and asked Anthony, How did you summon that sword? I kind of had this feeling that I should search my soul for a sword, focus on it, and then imagine that it manifests in my hand. And it did. From what I can tell, this sword is called the Sword of Truth, Anthony replied as he raised the sword in his hand to show them. The sword was a pale red color, seeming as though it were missing something. Maybe if we do the same, we can summon the swords of our soul as well, Dave said hopefully.
Yes,
Yes, but before that, feel the pain of my despair field, boy. Since you summoned an armament, this field takes a number of sections from your health meter equal to the armament's durability number. From what I can tell, that sword's number is 2, so you lose 2 sections. Anthony health points, 10 to 8. And it is also time for the Sword of Despair to randomly choose one of us to damage, Bartemius reminded them. And at that, a beam the same color as the Sword of Despair's aura hit Anthony. Anthony health points, 8 to 7. You will all soon know what it means to feel true despair. Dave and Jenna both closed their eyes and searched their souls for their soul swords. Dave found a blue two-handed longsword within his soul, and as he began to manifest his sword, he felt inclined to speak these words. Let a miracle of strength be manifest in these hands, and let that miracle make me strong enough to overcome my obstacles. Manifest! Sword of Strength! Power 3, Durability 3. Jenna found a black rapier within her soul and spoke these words as she manifested her sword.
I will be given the fortitude and temperance to stay true to my values and never falter. And let these things be manifest here and now. Manifest! Sword of Temperance!
Power 2, Durability 3. Since you both summoned armaments, you'll both feel the pain of my field of despair. Dave, health points 10 to 7. Jenna, health points 10 to 7. Do you feel the despair yet? You have all lost 3 health sections, while my health remains unchanged. You cannot defeat me, nor stop the tragedy that awaits you at the end of this battle. Bartemius told him. But you haven't won yet. This battle is far from over, Anthony responded. He is right. You've only taken 3 health sections from each of us, so as long as we can avoid your strikes, we still have time to find a way to strike back, Dave added. Fool, I need not strike you at all, for before long you will destroy yourselves by your own despair. In fact, while I wield the sword, I am in no danger from your strike, Bartemius told them, as he opened his arms in inviting manner. If you do not believe me, try to strike me down. Seizing the opportunity, Anthony charged at Bartemius to attack him. No, wait! Dave shouted, trying to stop him, but it was too late. When Anthony was about 3 feet away from Bartemius, the Sword of Despair intervened on its own and blocked the attack and sent Anthony flying back to where the other 2 were. Anthony health points 7 to 5. The Sword of Despair will protect its wielders from attacks without any interaction by that wielder. As you can see now, you cannot touch me. Even if you try, it will be the same result as for the boy, Bartemius explained. Now do you understand the predicament you find yourselves in? All you can do is wait for your inevitable demise. No, we will find a way to succeed, as long as we never lose hope, Anthony responded. Meanwhile, Jade and Asia were still battling. At this point, however, both women were out of breath, so they took a moment to catch it. After Jade managed to stabilize her breathing, she asked Asia,
Why do you fight so passionately for your master? What stake do you have in this? The one in charge of these events. She panted.
is,
Is my husband. I do whatever I can to support him, because he was there for me when no one else was. He saved me from my abusers. Abusers? Yes.
Asia said normally, finally catching her breath.
In the timeline where he comes from, my son was corrupted when I was a child, but at least then I still had my parents to take care of me. In this timeline, however, because of the time reflux caused by your friend's actions, that is, sacrificing his existence to save me. In this timeline, my parents died in a car accident when I was 6 years old. Since then, I went from foster home to foster home, and in several of them, my foster parents abused me in more ways than one. When I turned 18, I left my last foster home and spent the next several years trying to repair my psyche. One day, I met a man who showed me what it really means to be loved, valued, and respected. We fell in love and eventually got married. Then, one day, he trusted me enough to tell me his deepest ambition and about who he really was. That he was from the timeline and he had a plan to save the multiverse. But he needed my help. Me being a loving and supporting wife, supported him wholeheartedly. You're supporting your husband in the murder of trillions of lives?
Asked today.
That's right. I agree with him that this world is corrupt. There is so much evil in this world. We cannot allow it to be spread to the rest of the multiverse.
Asia replied.
It's true that evil is prevalent in our world. In spite of that, however, there are also people who are committed to doing good. People who go out of their way to help others. Not only that, but you're also robbing people of any chance for redemption. It isn't up to us to decide if someone is a lost cause. Simon is a firm believer that it is never too late to change for the better. In many ways, he has encouraged me to do so, and I believe that there are many others who can do the same for others. By limiting all life in our world, you'd be preventing those people from helping others to be saved. Imagine if someone took your husband away from you before you were able to meet him. Imagine where you would be if that were the case.
Today argued, which made Asia's eyes widen from understanding.
So will you continue this battle, knowing you'd be taking away something you were blessed with from others?
With a sigh, Asia lowered her weapon and said,
I was so happy when I first met him. He was such a blessing to me. I can't in good conscience take that opportunity from others. And I'd be a terrible wife if I left my husband suffer the same guilt. We have to stop him. I believe Simon is making progress towards that end.
Today replied. We should try to find the others.
We should try to find the others.
The two women continued down the tunnel Dan and Harold had taken before the battle. Meanwhile, Dave, Jenna, and Anthony were still struggling in their battle with Bartemius. Jenna and Dave had 7 sections in their health bars, while Anthony had 5. Bartemius' health still remained untouched. No matter what each of them tried individually, they could never get past Bartemius' sword's defensive abilities. That sword of his is something else, Dave panted.
Yeah, nothing we've tried so far has worked.
Added Jenna, just before a dark beam from Bartemius' sword struck her. Jenna health points 7 to 6. We have to find a way, said Anthony. A solution to this exists somewhere. We just can't give up. Anthony charged at Bartemius again, this time with full force. Wait! Dave called. Foolishness, boy. As expected, the sword of despair stopped Anthony and threw him backwards. Anthony health points 5 to 3. If injury to yourself does not prove to you the pointlessness of your struggling, then perhaps seeing your allies suffer over your actions will make you less tempted to do unnecessary things. Come forth! Roll out of shared misery! Bartemius chanted as he manifested a sword with a short staff with a red orb at the top. This rod's power will make your allies suffer the same damage that you take. Jenna 6 to 4, Dave 7 to 5. Bartemius! I thought you wanted us to battle you, but your actions say otherwise, called Dave as he got to his feet. It's true. The truth. I do not wish to fight. In fact, I do not need to fight you. I agreed to this battle so I could prove to you the pointlessness of your struggling against the inevitable. That which the boss is planning will come to pass, regardless of this battle's outcome. As shown in this battle, Fighting the inevitable leads to unnecessary suffering. In the timeline from where I came, before the great multiversal calamity, where all life in the multiverse was destroyed, I lived a peaceful life, though your friend took my 2 sons from me. However, I do not blame your brother for his actions. My son's wickedness made them a pariah of the multiverse, which needed to be eliminated from sane. I had the perfect wife. She was loving, kind, caring, and always helped others the best she could. She was a friend to all. She always supported me in my endeavors. Then the calamity occurred, and I tried to fight off the space demons. And then it targeted me. But my scuffle with him had compromised the integrity of our home. I was able to escape my house before it collapsed, but she was not so fortunate, and her remains were never found in the wreckage. After that, I spent months grieving over the loss of my beloved. And then one night, a man in a hooded cloak paid me a visit and told me he had a cure for my grief. That we could undo what had happened to my wife. All we would have to do is stop the flow of time for your universe beyond the day your brother met my firstborn son. Bartemius explained. If you believe there is a chance you could be reunited with your wife, then why are you still so sorrowful? Anthony asked Bartemius as he got back to his feet. Do you truly believe that to be the case? I know that. Whenever there is hope, there is always the potential for despair. Though I may be reunited with her, she may not be the same person she was before these events. When a timeline is changed, it cannot be perfectly reverted to the state it was in before the change. There will be some differences, however minor they might seem. There is even the chance that I don't even meet her at all in the new timeline. Bartemius replied as he looked over at Jenna, who was now on her knees, with her head down in resignation. It seems the girl has already given up. Jenna! Dave called. Jenna! Anthony called more loudly. No matter how loudly they called, Jenna didn't respond, but her health meter was inexplicably beginning to slowly decrease by 1. Fear not, girl. I won't make you suffer any longer. Bartemius said it as her health reached 1, and he raised his sword and charged towards Jenna. But just as he was about to strike her, Anthony blocked it with a shield he did not have before. The clash awoke Jenna from her stupor.
Anthony, save me. But where did you get that shield?
She asked him. When Bartemius was about to strike you, I manifested the other armament within my soul, the shield of faith, Anthony responded. Fool. That shield has a durability of 4, and you only have 3 health sections left, which means you are finished, Bartemius added as a dark beam struck Anthony. Anthony health points 3-0. Anthony then fell to his knees, and then, after the lights in his eyes left him, he fell face down to the floor.
Oh, Anthony.
Jenna cried, and she fell to her knees again. Anthony, Dave said with an anguish. Then suddenly, the shield of faith began to glow, and light particles began to fall upon Anthony's body, which lifted him up. And then one health section was restored to his health meter, and he began to draw breath again. Impossible! How did he come back to life again? Bartemius said with incredulity. It's simple, really, replied Dave. His faith and his sacrifice for his friend gave him a second chance. Anthony, you should combine me with the shield of faith to form the sword of our separate parts combined create. It is the only way to succeed now, said a voice that only Anthony heard, who then realized that it was his sword talking to him. Anthony saw that the sword of truth was resonating with the shield of faith. Anthony nodded in understanding. I combined the sword of truth with the shield of faith. These armaments are complementary of one another, allowing them to be combined together to form an even stronger armament. Let a miracle of hope manifest before us, and let that miracle encourage us to keep moving forward. Anthony chanted. Manifest! The sword of restored hope! Attack power 3, durability 3. Even after dying, you are still trying to produce a different result? My sword of despair will now take the extra health section you were blessed with. Bartemius responded, anger now rising within him. Not so, Bartemius. One of the Sword of Restored Hope's abilities is that it reverses damage effects and turns them into restorative effects. Anthony health points 1 to 4. Also, when it's first summoned, if myself or any of my allies are at less than half health, the sword restores our health to half. Anthony health points 4 to 5. Jenna health points 2 to 5. Dave health points 5. I knew we would find a way, Anthony replied. And after returning to Dave, he said, Dave, your sword of strength has a new unique ability where, if you make it resonate with your soul, it will evolve into an even more powerful sword. You just have to focus your will to succeed in this battle. Dave nodded, and feeling passion beginning to burn within him and grow hotter as the time went on, he channeled his will towards his sword, and the sword responded in kind by covering itself in blue flame. I resonate my sword of strength with the sword of my soul, with my soul. Become the power we need to overcome the obstacle before us. Manifest! Sword of power! Attack power 4, durability 4. Dave health points 5 to 9. Dave chanted, and the sword grew about a foot longer and 2 inches wider, and all who were present could tell that it was a powerful sword, a more powerful sword. Then the sword began to glow, and the attack strength of Dave's, Jenna, and Anthony's swords became 9, the combined power of their individual swords. Impossible! Your swords are all so much more powerful than mine! Bartemius exclaimed. But it doesn't matter. For thanks to the boy's new sword, we are locked in an endless stalemate, so I'm able to block your attacks in sequence, and the effect damage it would normally cause simply restores your life instead. Wrong! They replied with passion. That was only because we would strike individually. If we strike in unison, only one of those attacks will be blocked. Our hope has made it possible for us to change the inevitable, Anthony exclaimed as the three of them charged towards Bartemius simultaneously. Bartemius blocked Dave's strike. Then Jenna's strike made contact with Bartemius' sword, which shattered under the weight of Jenna's powered-up sword, and then struck Bartemius' body. Bartemius' health points, 10 to 4. Then Anthony's strike made direct contact with Bartemius. Bartemius' health points, 4 to 0. When Bartemius' health reached 0, the floor beneath him began to crumble, and he fell into the purple mist below. Dave, Jenna's, and Anthony's swords returned to within them. That boy's faith created the miracle that saved him, Bartemius said to himself as he fell. Maybe there is hope yet for this world, and maybe I will be reunited with my wife after all this is over. Thank you, boy, for helping me to believe in miracles again. Dave, Anthony, and Jenna stood in shock for only a few moments before they realized that the floor beneath them was falling apart as well. However, before Dan became overwhelmed by the Despairidons he was fighting, and before Harold could admit he was lost in the maze in which he found himself, the five of them found themselves in the same room along with Jade and Asia. In the room was a single unmarked door. Dave! Anthony! Jenna! What happened to you guys? Dan asked them. We just fought this guy Bartemius, and Anthony now has a new, more powerful sword, Dave replied. It's true. It's called the Sword of Restored Hope. It has healing abilities, Anthony added. Isn't this woman our enemy? Dave asked, turning to Jade and Asia.
Not anymore.
Jade replied.
She has seen the error of her ways and wants to save her husband from doing something he'll regret.
Husband, Harold responded.
Yes, the one in charge of these events is my husband. Agent,
Asia responded.
at any rate, we need to catch up with Simon and your other ally. I believe this door opens to a path that intersects with the path beyond the seventh trial. We can meet them after they complete it. Meanwhile, wait,
Meanwhile, Simon and James finally reached the top of the stairs. They stopped for a moment to catch their breaths. Why? Why couldn't there have been an elevator? Simon panted. It would seem that our enemy wants us to exhaust our energy before we reach the final trial. James responded, wheezing. The door before them had words that read, "Beyond this door is the final trial. Proceed through when ye be ready." Well, at least we finally made it, James stated playfully, and the two of them proceeded through the door. When they entered the room beyond, it was completely empty. There was no one waiting for them, and no door to proceed forward. Looking behind them, they saw the door they entered through had also disappeared. Then suddenly, a beam of light came from the ceiling and struck James. I, I remember, he said as he rose to his feet. I remember everything. My name is not James Muchero. My true name is Jack Spark, and I am your opponent for the final trial. However, this room is too small for our battle. Follow me. Similar to John Quiblius in the fourth trial, James opened a small portal and stepped through it. Simon, realizing he had no other choice, followed him. On the other side of the portal was a cathedral-sized empty room. The health bar appeared over Simon and Jack's heads. Look below you. The floor below is made of glass, which shall shatter beneath the loser of our battle, condemning them to sink into an eternity of darkness, and neither of us can leave until that happens to one of us. Also, gravity is not applied in this realm, so we are able to fly in here as well. Or at least one can until they lose this battle, Jack explained. Now manifest! Sword of Reflection! Attack power, 2. Durability, 2. A green sword appeared in Jack's right hand. When the Sword of Reflection is initially summoned, it immediately takes one section of your health meter from you. Simon health points, 10 to 9. Now come at me, Simon Petrus!